So, hi, I wanted to just check in. How's everyone doing? How did everyone sleep last week? Um, tell me everything. Did you, anything when you said last week, did anything stick with you? Did anything help? Did anything hurt? Um, Go ahead and put yourself off of mute and just jump on in. I feel like Stefan was about to jump in and say something. Okay, maybe not.
I'll
Okay,
start.
somebody else.
I'll start. So,
Kathy, great.
so the daylight savings time thing. So the 1 hour, you might think it would only affect me by 1 hour, but like I wasn't tired. Like I used to go to about 1 o'clock a.m. And I wasn't tired at 2 o'clock a.m. So I like 2 nights in a row I went to sleep at 3 o'clock a.m., which is way late for me. So I don't know. The daylight savings thing like messed me up entirely.
Hang on.
I found that since I fall asleep before I close my eyes, fall asleep so fast around 9. I looked at the log and I tried to push it back by a few minutes every night. And I got myself up to 10 o'clock one night. But the second time, instead of bedtime sleep time, I did bedtime wake time. And I really watched, it's almost like there was a 9:21 p.m. to 5:19 a.m. 9:47 to 5:37. I mean, it was really uncanny to see it written down like that. But
So it was really close. Like it was similar each night?
very similar, as was the number of times to get up to go to the bathroom. and, I'm just on this awful 9 to 5 cycle. But since I don't go to bed and have trouble falling asleep, it was more useful to me to have the wake up time written down and to see every day just that pattern. So that was helpful to me.
I have somebody very close to me that sleeps at 9 p.m. and wakes up at 5 and just loves it. Like they've got no problem with, then they're up at 5, then they're exercising, and then they're the first ones at work, and then that's just how it is.
Right.
It's only a problem if your sleep is a problem for you, then it's a problem. But if falling asleep at 9 and waking up at 5 isn't a problem, it's only if you then wake up at 2 and you can't get back.
Right.
But it sounds like you were able to get back.
Well, I didn't have any of those awful 2, 3, 4 o'clock wake ups.
Right. Good.
And, I think seeing the exercise in that column and then the caffeine, it was a really good chart for me. Thankfully, it wasn't one of those weeks where I had the 2, 3, 4, oh my God, I'm not falling back to sleep and I feel like hell all day long kind of thing. So.
Great. Yeah, and we're going to talk about potential things that sort of wake you up at night a little bit. We're going to talk about sleep cycle tonight. Also, just wanted to circle back to Kathy. So sorry, you guys, I've moved to an area where hopefully my dog will be disruptive, but my Wi-Fi is a little bit less predictable here. So, Kathy, I feel like I heard people talk about the daylight savings effect on them this time more than my entire life. I don't know if it's the year in pandemic or I don't know what it is, but I feel like everyone flipped out, like really felt totally confused by it, much more than I've ever heard people complain.
Yeah, usually I don't notice at all. I like someone else is saying, I fall asleep before my eyes close when I go to bed too. So usually sleep isn't a problem. So it was interesting that because of that daylight savings, my body wanted to stay up so much later, which is backwards, right? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I highly recommend, I think I've mentioned to you guys, Matthew Walker's book called Why We Sleep.
Yeah, right.
And it really, have you read it?
Yes, it's scary.
Yes. And well, one of the things he chronicles what happens on mornings of the daylight saving sleep loss. And there are all these statistics of how there's more car accidents, there's more hospitalizations, all because people lost 1 hour of sleep. And the essentially global impact that daylight savings has on people. So yes, if you want to get scared. Melissa, I see you raising your hand.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. I thought I'd mention, I'm in Arizona.
Okay.
So we don't
you guys don't have
daylight
it.
savings time. But it's been interesting to watch and see the same thing that you've talked about. I've lived here most of my life and we just don't have it. And so we can't really relate to that. But what I can relate to is my college students, one of which is at USC, who's in midterms and stuff and is having to adjust to the time change in California. And it's messed up everything. I mean, they're up till 3 and 4 and stuff like that. So being that I'm an Arizonan and have not experienced it, I don't really know how to support that. So I'd be kind of curious, some advice, if anybody has it.
Right. And what's so interesting is how 1 hour change messes us up. It's not an exact ratio. It messes us up more than 1 hour. Like what Kathy was saying, it wasn't like she was then 1 hour later. It then, once the thing was off, the whole thing got off and messed up, which is just sort of, what happens when if we travel and we're jet lagged, etc. It's not like it's just the hours. It's that our whole system goes, wow, what's going on, and gets confused. And our brain loves, as I said, our brain loves to repeat patterns, even if it's not a good pattern for us, right? That's why many of us get into habits that are not healthy habits, because a habit is in itself just comforting. It's comforting to repeat actions, thoughts, whatever it is. So the challenge is with sleep, when we get off pattern, people who don't have a challenge with sleep don't understand. They think, oh, you're tired, so now you'll sleep really well. That's sort of saying, like, to an alcoholic, like, well, you had enough to drink last night, so you certainly don't need, any alcohol tonight. I mean, you would never say that to an alcoholic, right? They're like, yeah, I have a problem. I have a challenge with this, right? So, if we had trouble sleeping last night, it can knock our pattern and system off and make it difficult to get back into a rhythm. And unfortunately, there is no sort of magic pill for that, except for adhering to, the sleep hygiene techniques that we know can kind of keep us within bounds. And then also a huge amount of self-compassion. For me, it's really helpful knowing that everybody else got messed up from it this year. Then I feel like I'm not so crazy and not as mad at myself. And I feel like that compassion component is really important when it comes to the work with sleep, because as if our challenge with sleep weren't enough, what then rushes in the moment we have a problem is anxiety around, oh my God, I'm having a problem sleeping. Now I'm going to always have a problem sleeping, and tomorrow's going to be messed up, and it's going to affect my whole life. And it just, what we do to ourselves with that, and then the momentum that is built. And that's part of why I had assigned the writing prompts that I gave to you guys, was to just start to get a little bit of a mental handle on how sometimes the sleep challenge can be presented to us, but then so much of it, it's us that's adding anxiety and stress to the problem and making it worse. So if we can understand where the problem is, if we can have compassion with ourselves from it, sometimes we can stop the momentum of it taking us over. It can really, can do a lot. Anyone else want to chime in? Julia, yeah.
I am trying to have 0 coffee this week, which isn't so hard because I only really drink about half a cup a day. But still, I thought maybe it would help. The not drinking a huge glass of water at 9 at night has helped. Not have to get up and go to the bathroom, but I still wake up around 3. It doesn't seem to matter what I do. I wake up at some point in the middle of the night. I can get to sleep really easily. And in fact, get really tired and I'm like, okay, have to go to sleep. If I go to bed late, I'll sleep through, I noticed. But only if I go to bed late, and it's not really, 8 hours, because I'll wake up like at 7 or 6:30 like clockwork. So I'm curious about that middle of the night tendency, and I don't put a lot of pressure on myself about it. I don't wake up thinking like, oh, the world, my life, blah, blah, blah. I have an attitude of like, it's still my sleep time. I'm going to relax, but I can't seem to stop it. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that.
Sure, great. You articulated it really well. Question for you. Well, first of all, I'm glad the water is helping. The caffeine, if you have no trouble falling asleep, the caffeine's probably not an issue for you. So if you enjoy your coffee, then I don't want to, no reason to suffer the deprivation of coffee if you don't have to. But question for you, when you wake up, do you wake up hot?
Sometimes I wake up hot, but I must say, because of course I'm of an age where I could wake up hot, but I have started taking flaxseed for that, which has been really amazing, ground flaxseed. And I did this before I woke up hot. So I don't know that it's dependent on that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mean a hormonal thing. I mean, just if we, a lot of people sleep with a lot of layered blankets, heavy blankets. And as I think I mentioned, once you're under those for 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours, the heat really builds up, and people are, and then they're throwing the blankets off in the middle of the night, or they fall asleep with socks on and they pull their socks off, something like that. Yes. Okay, great. So the reason why I mention that is, as I mentioned in the sleep hygiene, I feel like it's one of those things where, you can Google these sleep hygiene things, but they don't really give you any nuances. So you probably have heard that it is good to have your room temperature very low for sleep. The problem is, if you're then sleeping under a million blankets with socks on, and that negates it, right? And it's not about, should or shouldn't, do's or don'ts for some other purpose. It's simply that if your body gets hot in the night, it's an evolutionary response. It believes that there's a fire nearby, and it wakes your body up to protect you, so you can wake up your clan and run to safety, type of thing. So that if your skin gets to experience a certain amount of heat, you'll wake up. And pretty much for people who wake up at the same time each night, it's almost always because of this. So what I would recommend is, even though it is really yummy and delicious to fall asleep with many blankets and socks on, what I do is I crawl under the bed with socks on and a million blankets, and I read my book and I get cozy. But right at that moment where I'm going to fall asleep, I throw them off and I take my socks off, and have just a very total bummer thin blanket. A thin blanket keeps your body temperature consistent, because otherwise it gets hot, you throw the blankets off, then you cool down, then you're too cold, then you're bringing the blankets back on again, and then you're hot and you're cold and you're hot and you're cold and you're hot and you're cold, and you think there's something wrong with you. You go, oh, there's something wrong with my body temperature, I'm getting hot and cold. Actually, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just wearing too many blankets. So if you just use just 1 or 2, again, it's not cuddly, it's not yummy, it's not fun, but I can't tell you 90% of the people who I have worked with who wake up in the middle of the night, I tell them this thing about the blankets, and it's a life changer. I hope you will be one of those 90%. Go try it this week and let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, and please pass that on, especially to women, because women pile on a lot of stuff to be warm at night, and then they get hot, and then they think and then they self-blame, but it's actually not that. It's just, well, because then you throw them off, and of course the room is then freezing cold, right? Because you put the temperature down, and then you get freezing. So anyway, this happens a lot. So I want to make the world a better place by people having consistent body temperature when they sleep. It's my little way of making a difference in the world. Great. So I'm going to dive in. The other huge thing that is an effect of maintaining sleep is the sleep cycle. And I have touched on this in week 1 and week 2, but today I am going to dive into a slide presentation and give you guys a little bit more information on the stages of sleep and what happens in the stages of sleep. You guys game to put on your learning brain for about 10 minutes? Okay, cool. I know this will feel a little bit like high school science, but there's it's kind of cool, I think, and kind of interesting. So I'm going to share, and where am I? I am not on the right screen. Take that away. Go away. Let's see here. You can see what a mess my desktop is. Okay. Where is stuff I need? Here. Okay. Thanks for your patience. Okay, let's get this party started. So here we are, sleep week 3 already. I feel like we just started 2 seconds ago. Week 1, we talked a little bit about how sleep works and doesn't work with the different chemicals in the brain, the circadian rhythm, sleep-wake homeostasis, etc. Last week, we talked about sleep disorders. We went through many of them and a little bit of the tips on sleep hygiene. I sent this to you, some writing that you can do to kind of get a sense of the impact that your sleep challenges have had on your life so that you can start to course correct where necessary. And of course, the sleep log. I loved, by the way, who was it? Somebody had just said to, please feel free to adapt the sleep log to your needs. Right, exactly. Yeah, adapt it to your needs. So it's not, the sleep log's meant to help you. You want to always set it up to be able to give you the information you need. So here we are in the sleep cycle. I'm just going to read some of this. The thing about the sleep cycles, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I learned a little bit about sleep in high school science, and I learned about REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and then I feel like that was really the only part I remember, was that when you fall asleep, your eyes start to move, and that's the most important part, and you need REM sleep. And so I feel like I sort of went into almost like a REM sleep scarcity complex for the rest of my life. Like, am I getting enough REM sleep? Am I getting enough REM sleep? Without really understanding the full picture. So I wanted to go through this with you. We all, whenever we fall asleep, if you're doing a normal quote, healthy sleep, we sleep in what are called sleep cycles. And a sleep cycle is 5 full stages of sleep. And a sleep cycle is a little bit different from everyone. They say it's between 90 and 120 minutes for each person, full sleep cycle. And as we do these sleep cycles, we continue to cycle around and we go through these different stages each time. So it's not like we fall asleep and we're in REM and then we wake up. We are constantly cycling and circling around. And it turns out that cycling is quite important, because it turns out in each one of these 5 stages of sleep, something very different is happening to different parts of the body. Different parts of the body are getting activated and healed. Different important moments of rejuvenation and recovery are spontaneously, magically happening to us as we sleep without us even knowing it. And it turns out that each one of these phases is so important. And while REM sleep is important, it by far is not necessarily the most important, which I'm hoping that you'll see as we go through this. So as we start to fall asleep, we're in stage 1 sleep. We call this the lightest stage. And this is where your eye movements actually start to slow down. Your muscles begin to relax. Again, if you've watched someone fall asleep, you can sort of see, or an animal, like I love watching my dog fall asleep, her whole little body starts to kind of settle down. It's an incredible thing watching someone fall asleep. It's such a relaxing thing to watch. However, as we talked about last week, for those of you who experience or know anyone who experiences those either sleep paralysis or the hypnic myoclonia, those jerks, sudden jerks when you're falling asleep, those often happen in stage 1. So while you are, starting to fall asleep, it's like all of a sudden it can pull you out of it because you're like snap awake, whatever. So this is you're still able to hear things, you're still able to smell things, you still have some awareness of your senses. But by the time we get into stage 2, our brain waves start to slow down, and we have these intermittent bursts of brain waves called sleep spindles. So the brain waves slow and then like this, just these little sleep spindles. Our eye movements stop and our body temperature drops. I just want to call this out. Your body temperature needs to drop. It needs to drop in stage 2. If your body temperature can't drop, then you can't go, then you might not be able to fall back through that stage of sleep. So you might have done 1 or 2 stages of sleep, cycles of sleep, and then by the time 3 o'clock in the morning happens, and you're trying to get through the sleep cycle again, your body temperature needs to drop. But at this point, you've built up too much heat. You can't, right? So it's really important there. Stage 2 of sleep is also where a lot of our memory, where memories are made, and what we'll learn about next week called the glymphatic system, which is essentially the brain's sorting and clearing mechanism, right? Almost like clearing a desktop at the end of the day. The brain actually does this while we're sleeping. It's so amazing, all on its own. And this happens in stage 2. It's like, oh, this is really important. Let's put that in long-term memory. Oh, this isn't important. Let's toss this out. So all of this happens in stage 2 of sleep. It doesn't happen in REM. So we really do need this stage 2 of sleep. It's kind of this beautiful thing. Stage 3 and 4 of sleep are often lumped together in what we call deep sleep. I don't really know why they categorize it this way, but I'm just repeating to you that the way the neuroscientists do it, which is that this deep sleep of stage 3, this is where the delta waves appear in our brain. So they overtake those sleep spindles where we're having little kind of spasmodic. Now it's bigger, deeper waves in our brain, and we're really kind of in it here. We're really sort of dropping down, and the sleep is really, we're kind of going into the descent here. By stage 4, the quickly moving waves are almost gone. It's all delta waves. And stage 4 is the time where your senses really withdraw. So, you can watch somebody who can just like sleep through, you're cooking dinner, you're this, you're that, whatever. You're making noises and people can just sleep right through it. At that point, they're probably in at least stage 4 of sleep. But what's happening to the body is even more interesting at this time. The blood pressure drops, the blood flows out to the muscle tissue. And this is a moment where tissue growth and repair happens. Growth hormones are released energy is restored, and it's considered the most restorative time of sleep. So very important for like professional athletes, how they talk about, that they have to sleep for a certain amount of time after they work out, because then the blood goes to the muscles and the growth hormone happens to repair everything. That's all happening in stage 4. And it's, again, so interesting. That tissue growth doesn't happen in REM sleep, right? So REM sleep isn't for your physical body. If you have an injury, or if you've, been physically depleted from something, actually your brain is really going to want that stage 4 of sleep to help your physical body rejuvenate. But stage 5 is, of course, the stage that most of us are familiar with, this rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. Of course, called this rapid eye movement sleep because our muscles become, it's basically a switch. The muscles become paralyzed, but our heart rate, instead of slowing down, which it's done up to this point, it actually increases. And whereas, in stage 4, our blood pressure had just dropped, in stage 5 of sleep, our blood pressure goes back up. Our breathing, becomes irregular, and it speeds up, and our eyes start to, rapidly move and flutter, which is what gives it its name. And it's this is the stage where all of our dreaming happens. So basically, dreaming doesn't happen in stage 1 through 4 of our sleep. Dreaming happens just in REM. Cortisol is balanced. It's for the brain the most healing time, important time. But I really wanted you guys to get that each one of these, each one of these stages of sleep of the cycle really deserves its own award here. It's not like just REM wins the trophy. We really do need each one of these. I made this little circle chart here because I wanted to somehow illustrate and highlight how the sleep cycle is happening, that it sort of happens in a circular, almost spiral fashion in our brain. It's important to get that when we start, okay, so because it's, say it's 90 minutes, say I fall asleep at 10 o'clock. I go through a sleep cycle, and that sleep cycle ends at 11:30. After the sleep cycle, I start back at stage 1, right? So you go from the deepest sleep to the lightest sleep, right? You go from the deepest to the lightest. So at 11:30, I'm back at stage 1 of sleep. Now, if you're considered a good sleeper, you'll sleep right through that transition. You'll go from your REM sleep to stage 1 of sleep, and you sleep right through it. Lucky you. But for those of us who wake up throughout the night, and you feel like, I don't know, I just keep waking up at different periods, and I don't know exactly why. I roll over this, roll over that. I get up this, I get up that. Very often, you are getting up in between a sleep cycle, because again, you're not, and it's such a weird feeling too. You could be like all of a sudden 11:30 or 2 in the morning, all of a sudden you're like, and you feel wide awake. You don't feel like awake but groggy. When you wake up at night, you don't feel like groggy awake. You feel like, how am I completely awake? I don't know, from total sleep to totally being awake again. Well, actually, it's true. You're not crazy. You just went from your deepest sleep very often into the top of stage 1 sleep cycle. So you may just feel completely wide awake. Very natural, normal feeling. So again, if you are a good sleeper, you're sleeping right through that. But if you have extra tension, if something's been going on in your mind, if you've been anxious, if you haven't had enough exercise, if you drank a bunch of water, it's going to make you want to wake up. Very often something will kick you awake in between those deepest sleep cycles to the lightest sleep cycle, and that's when you're waking up. Now, the good news is, for me, in this case, knowledge has been power. Many people just knowing, oh, I'm just waking up in between sleep cycles. That's not a big deal. I'm not going to get anxious about it. I'm not going to think something's wrong with me. I'm just going to roll over, find a new little cozy spot, and snuggle in and just catch the next sleep cycle. Often what happens, what disrupts our sleep, is that we wake up from the sleep cycle and then we start to panic. I'm awake. I shouldn't be awake. Oh my God, all these things. And now my tomorrow's going to be messed up and like this. And then you can't get back. But if you go, oh, actually, it's not weird to wake up in between sleep cycles. And also, just if I may say, from experience, as we age, we become lighter sleepers, right? That just happens. So it's just more common that you'll wake up. These are usually the moments when you're waking up. And if you can, again, it's all about the self-compassion and self-talk. Don't start spinning. Just go, oh, I'm in between. I'm going to just try to get back down. Again, if you can't, okay. But just this little bit of knowledge can be very valuable. So again, we start at the lightest stage and we sort of move into the deepest stage. We move into these deeper stages of sleep and we're sort of moving kind of inward. The other thing I wanted to mention here is this. As if this weren't complicated enough, I hope I'm explaining this okay, because it is a little bit tricky, but this is worth knowing. Okay, say you get that a sleep cycle is 90 minutes long, that we got to go through 5 stages in the 90 minutes. And when you're done with the deepest stage, you're back at the top, right? You're back at awake stage, stage 1, and you got to go back in again. But what changes each time you hit a cycle, say you hit 4 sleep cycles in a night, 5 sleep cycles in a night, 6 sleep cycles in a night, depending on how long you're sleeping. Every time you hit a sleep cycle, the ratio of the stages changes. This is kind of a mind bender. So imagine that in a 90-minute sleep cycle, the first time you fall asleep at 10 o'clock, imagine that REM sleep is maybe 20 minutes of that 90. But the next time you do a sleep cycle from 11:30 to 1, the REM sleep is going to be half hour, 45 minutes. Every time you hit a sleep cycle, the amount of REM gets longer. Every time you hit a sleep cycle, REM takes up more of the sleep cycle. So 1 through 4 get squished and 5 gets longer. Why is that interesting? If you've ever had a night where you're having like some incredible deep dream and you're about to fly and you're going to figure out the mysteries of the universe and oh my God, something amazing was about to happen and like right at the moment before you like get like lottery numbers or something, that's when your alarm goes off, right, to wake you up. That's true. That's what happens. It happens because almost all of our dreaming, most of that REM sleep happens at the end of the night. Because again, we just a little bit of REM at the first cycle and then more REM as the night goes on. So the reason to try to sleep longer, of course, if you can, is that then you get more REM sleep, you get more dreams, you get more mental healing, etc. But don't go like I did into like a REM sleep scarcity complex. Like, oh my God, if you don't get it, all the other sleep cycles are also very important and healing to you in individual ways. This is just sort of another sort of visual chart of kind of explaining how, like the first time you go through a sleep cycle, there's a certain amount of REM sleep, and as you go through your cycles, you hit more REM sleep. Hopefully, I'm not great with charts. For me, I always prefer somebody to just explain it to me. Okay, good. So that's it for here. I'm gonna stop my screen share. Wow, that went fast. Okay, and just check in if you guys have questions on that.
So I have a question. Is there a certain amount of like minutes we should get of REM and deep? Or is there like a percentage of our night that should be REM?
Right. You know, there may be, I don't know it on purpose because that would give me too much anxiety. Like I've been, well, if I'm going to get this, you know what I mean? Like I just basically, as long as I had so much trouble getting myself to sleep that for me, mostly this was helpful to me to just know that, oh, whatever sleep I'm getting, it's the right kind. And I'm gonna just trust that my brain is doing its thing on the right way. As long as you're kind of getting in there. But if you wanted to come back to us with that, probably some other people would be interested in all this going to my ears.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is
I had, oh, go ahead.
no, you go.
Yeah, I had a quick question because you mentioned that deep dreams can happen during the REM sleep. And for me, I don't really dream. Like I remember maybe 1 or 2 dreams per year. And then I was wondering if that means that I'm not really getting the REM sleep or something else that's preventing me from remembering the dreams.
I'm so glad you asked that question, Stefan, because I left that out, and I'm so glad you asked. You are dreaming. You just don't remember it, which is the great news. The great news is all of us are dreaming. If we weren't, we wouldn't basically be alive. So it's happening to all of us on its own. That's to me what's kind of so amazing about seeing that whole chart, is just showing the inherent wisdom of the body and what it knows to do and how it takes care of us on its own without us micromanaging it. You know, there's so much micromanaging that we try to do to take care of ourselves. The great news is when it comes to sleep, if you sleep a night, you are experiencing dreams. And most people don't remember their dreams. So if you are interested to remember your dreams, there are techniques for that, and there are ways to start to cultivate remembering them. But I just want to say, from a health and safety standpoint, if you weren't having them, we would know, because you'd be extremely ill or not, you know, something would be really wrong. There's a couple things I'll say about the dreams really quickly. I recommend keeping something by your bed to write down, and then at night saying to yourself, hey, I want to start to remember my dreams. Please help me remember, or just kind of talk to yourself in whatever way you like. And it may take a couple of weeks because like that communication hasn't been active. But through the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, there is a wonderful ongoing series of dream workshops and dream work led by Reverend Jim Burklow. And if you're interested in that, that's all just free workshops for the campus community. So I encourage you to jump in if that's of interest to you. And Julia.
I had the exact same question at the exact same time. So you've answered.
Okay, great. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's do this. Let's take our last, we've got 20 minutes left together. And let's take that to do practice. And so just as a reminder, I'm showing you guys all of these practices because these I encourage you to do either at the end of the day at night as a way to wind down and let go, or if you wake up in the middle of the night. Some people wake up and they're up for a couple of hours and then they're tripping out. So I encourage you to try to remember some of these practices and to do them and use them as tools to wind down and clear and focus. Okay? Great. Okay, good. So let's do this. Just find yourself comfortable in a chair. And we'll just start by rolling the shoulders. and then roll them back the other way. And then let's just start with the head. It'll roll. And as we do it, start to deepen and slow down the breath, sending a message to your nervous system that it's time to start downshifting. And let's again go the other way. Great. And then we'll do that side stretch. And come on up. Side two. And come on up. And then into a twist. And release, and let's twist on side two. And then release, and then just right foot, just give some ankle circles. Circle it the other way. And release. And then let's take the left foot, ankle circles. And circle it the other way. And then release. And then again, let's do that face and jaw massage. So start kind of at that thick part of the jaw, where those sort of thick, hard muscles are at the end of the jaw. Start to work down towards your chin. And then I usually do little piano fingers above the lips, piano fingers into the cheekbones. And then when I get to the temples, I usually do little circles. Again, I'm sort of exaggerating the sound of the breath to help you, remind you to breathe. Letting the day go, I'll go into little piano fingers on my forehead. Great. Just kind of free form on the whole face. Okay, great. And then release. So we have not done Ujjayi breath yet together, have we? Ujjayi breath? Great. That's what I want to work on today. So Ujjayi breath, for any of you who are yoga practitioners, you'd be familiar with Ujjayi breathing. But Ujjayi breathing it's such an interesting breath because it's actually the breath that we do when we're sleeping. Everyone does it. So imagine if you guys just kind of watch me, I'm going to kind of act this out in a very silly way. So imagine watching someone fall asleep. Watching, my dog does this, you watch a child, you've got your partner, you've got a roommate. If you watch someone fall asleep, they're breathing through their nose. And then there is a moment where they're breathing, even though it's through their nose, the sound of the breathing will shift, they'll sort of settle, and it becomes a hollow sound. So if someone's trying to fall asleep and they sound like this is all nose breathing. After a while, their body will kind of stop and settle. And all of a sudden, the breath will be different. Instead of being, it'll be like this. And sometimes that's when they even will start to snore, right? Right? You guys can kind of picture there's a moment where the breath changes. And that's a natural shift that happens, if we're lucky, for everybody when we sleep. Now, what's actually happening is the shift that's happening is, again, this is mouth closed, this is breath through the nose. What's happening is there's essentially a closing down of the back of the throat, which just changes the way the breath is flowing through, and it changes the sound. So again, my mouth is closed, but instead of sounding like a sniff, my breath sounds more like a hollow sound, like this. Now, the great news is the brain identifies this sound as the sound of sleeping. So sometimes it can work almost like a Pavlovian response. If we actually just make that sound of that ujjayi breath, the brain goes, oh, must be sleeping time. It's like ringing the bell for the dog of Pavlov, right? Oh, it must be sleeping time. And sometimes just making the sound can help trigger us into a deep sleep. Yes.
So
Frank?
what's the word you're using? Ujjayi?
Yeah, great question. It's a Sanskrit word because it's a yogic breathing technique. Ujjayi. That means jai means victory. What I'd like to do, since we don't have tons of time left, is I'd love for you guys to try it. And if you struggle with it, it's a little bit tricky to teach on a Zoom. If you struggle with it, you can email me and we can set up a time and I can help you individually. But what we're going to do is I'm going to have you listen to your breath of a regular sniff sound, and then I'm going to have you try listening to the hollow sound. I'm going to walk you through both, and then we're just going to move into the relaxation because we're running low on time. Okay? So get into a comfortable position. Just trust me and just come along for the ride. Okay. So your mouth is going to stay closed, and for a moment, close your eyes and just bring your fingers up to your nose and kind of pinch it and let go quickly so you can make some sniffing sound. Sort of like I am. Again, this is not a very attractive thing to do, but just so you get the idea. This is what I call a sniff. Do it a few times. Now let your fingers go, and instead of making the sniff, try to shift the sound and make it a hollow sound in the back of your throat. Don't think too much about it. Just hear the sound and try to match your sound to my sound. Don't get trapped in your head of, am I doing it right? Where is it in my throat? Don't worry about any of that right now. Listen to the sound and just try to match your breathing sound to my sound. That's it. Maybe you'll get it right, maybe you won't. Just focus on the sound of the breath. Whether you're able to make the hollow sound or not, just keep breathing and focusing on the sound of the breath. Picture watching someone fall asleep and the way their breath shifts. This breath actually takes quite a bit of effort. So if you're almost getting tired from it, you're not crazy. Do try to stick with me and make the sound of the breath. And now release the hollow sound and just come back to natural breathing. Listen to the sound of your breathing. Notice the sound may be a little irregular. Allow the sound of your breath to shift and change however it wants to now. And remember this practice of listening to the evolving sound of your breath. And as you listen to your breath, begin now to also listen to other sounds. Notice the other sounds. Sounds in your room, sounds outside of your room, sound of my voice. If your body is shifting, that sound. And begin to allow yourself to be aware of all shifting and evolving sounds without reacting to them, without pushing them away. Just being mindful of all sounds. Awareness of all sounds. Great, and as you're ready, you can come back, or if you're in the zone, please feel free to stay there. So I hope that this information was helpful to you. I really enjoyed going through it, and you guys had some great questions. Next week, we will be talking about the glymphatic system and the sort of mental sorting process that goes on. Anyone who feels like they have a million things going on in their mind, a lot of anxiety that wakes them up at night, this will be the week for you. So I really look forward to it. Thank you all so much. Feel free to email me this week, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.